На мольберте жизни красками небес напишу.
Вопрос авторства.
An author's question. A lot of people think it's not spiritual to sign your name after a poem or song, considering it wiser and more correct, and that you'll receive a greater reward in heaven if an author writes a poem or a song and then just publishes it anonymously so that all glory be to God. What is your outlook on this? Is it worth for an author to sign his name on Christian literature, or should it be hidden in some way that someone somewhere sometime wrote it, and all glory must go to God, so that the author does not become prideful?
You know, I think outsiders often worry about the pride issue, but I think the author should be the one worrying about not becoming prideful. It's written, examine yourself in the teaching, not examine someone else and see if they'll become prideful or not. Our job is to fulfill our mission, and that mission is to show respect to the person who wrote the poetry. Yes, it's with the help of God, but God has used this person. He or she worked hard on the poetry, went through some certain things in life. He cried and suffered through this work. And should we not give credit? Like it's written, give credit where credit is due. To whom is this written? I think that the author's name has to be signed for certain. Under every poem, the name of the person who God wrote the poem through should be signed. We do not have to look far. Let's look at God himself. Let's learn from the Bible. Just look at what's written. The Psalms of David, Psalms of Asaph, the sons of Korah, Psalms of Solomon. If we look the first line of Psalms, we see that it is written to the choir director, a psalm of David, psalms of sons of Korah, psalm of Asaph. They could have skipped writing these first lines and just started with the rest if it wasn't important who was praying this or who had written it. But look at how God responds to this. He could have erased these first lines written in the Psalms, where it was written who wrote the Psalms, who the author was of this prayer, of these thoughts. All our books and prophecies are signed with a name, and God did not hide these names from us, as well as the Gospels of Matthew and Luke. Some say, what's the difference who wrote them, as long as they were written? But to God it is important, and God knows whom to trust, who to inspire to write this. And we as authors carry the responsibility for the things we write. I also want to say that author's signature heavily reflects on the author's development in ministry. If songs and poems are released without an author, he doesn't develop and grow in his ministry. Many creative people have been discouraged or have given up because they couldn't grow in their songs and poems.
They didn't have support?
Because no one knows who they are. Some tell me, I wrote an album, wasted $5,000, worked day and night, saved for many years. I know these people. They have come to my home and told me about this, saying, I wrote this album, I released this song, but sold one CD, because buyers would say, oh, don't buy it, I'll make a copy for you. People don't understand. Those who don't support us financially are making it worse for us. They think they're helping by making copies and giving it to others. Unfortunately, our mentality is finding methods to get things for free. But I want to say that's not the right mentality. If you find a song and you like it, and you see that the person has a talent, then support them financially, so that next year they can produce another album, and you'll be able to receive the spiritual food and be fed off of their gift. But what we do is that we copy material from one another, stealing the money that belongs rightfully to the author.
Some say that the authors are making money off of this.
They say, you received this gift from God, you should give it as a gift to others. Even though this pertains to something completely different. It pertains to the gifts that were given from God, such as the supernatural gifts of healing or knowledge, gifts that a person doesn't have to strive to work on. For example, a person cannot take credit for the gift of healing.
Like the gift of knowledge. Can a person be taught this?
Yes, this is something very different. You put work in day and night. You don't sleep. You don't go to work and make money. You take time away from your family just to write a song. It costs a lot and people don't understand. I always say, look at yourself. What can you do from your standpoint to support this person? For example, I have boxes of CDs that were recorded and now I just keep them in my garage. I cannot sell them because the songs are already all over the internet on hundreds of sites with advertisements around them. Someone is making money off of my music with the click of each download. But the authors get no recognition and their names are not known. Sometimes I go to a church, I try selling my CDs and people say, "Who is this person? What is she singing?" But at the same time, they've heard the songs, just never knew who the author was. And this is how an artist gets discouraged and says, I wasted $5,000 and won't ever get them back. How will I release anything else? And their inspiration dies and they stop writing.
How many people are there like this?
Oh, there's many. I want to bring up another example. I have a friend from Russia, a poetess. Her name is Evelina, and she writes beautiful poems. For a long time, she could not publish her work because she just didn't have the finances. And finally, she was able to publish a thin book that she saved her money for, and she was telling me that the books were just lying in boxes in the garage. But my poems are flying all over the world on hundreds of sites signed with the name Edward Desart, and people in the comments are writing, "Oh, what a poem! How great is Edward Desart! What a great person!" But this person has already passed away. However, someone in the carelessness or someone who thought that the author was not important wrote that the author is not known or put a random name. And she was telling me how sad she was that her poems lay in books in the garage and no one knows about them. Meanwhile, people are running to stores to buy these books by Edward Desart. I personally have read these comments saying, "I bought his book, but I can't find this poem. Can someone tell me in which book it is?" Understand that this isn't right, and because of this we will answer to God. If you're copying a poem, give credit to the author. You can help them develop so people can find out about them, not so that they can become prideful like we think. This will be his problem and he'll answer before the Lord. From our side, we just need to support them. If I'm writing a song with someone, I'll always say whose music it is. Or if I'm working with someone, I'll always say who was involved. Sometimes my poems are sung as songs with another author listed. And I ask the singers, "Why wouldn't you give credit to the author of the words?" And the person replies, "Because if I sing it, it becomes my own." So basically, a person just came up with a melody, sang it, and now considers themselves the author. But the real author behind the words does not receive the credit. I have found even my own poems signed with another name, and there were times where a couple words were just switched, and the author now is someone else. And I ask, how is that possible? It's my song with just a couple words switched, and they say, well, the words are different now, so it's not your work anymore. It has come to moments like this. Even Vera Kushner said that sometimes they take poems and change and adapt them without asking for permission. But this is like your soul, your child. You work on every word you write, and then people easily take out parts and add their own words. It's already not in rhythm and out of place. Where once it was written one way, they put in another word that changes the meaning. There are many examples that I can bring up about how people took parts out they didn't like and added something that didn't even fit. When they do this, they give the poem a totally different meaning. So this is why it's important to save the original text and not readapt it. You do not have the right to do this. There are even laws against it, but we think we have the right to change and cut the poem and not credit the author. But I'm telling you, friends, by acknowledging the author's name, you are showing them respect, like the Lord shows respect to the authors of the Psalms and books of the Bible. By doing this, you help a person develop. When people find out, then they can purchase their books, and this means the person can continue to write more. They can stay home from work to write. If you're really worried about that person becoming a millionaire, then don't think about it. You never know how much work is put into these publishings. I never knew how difficult it was to publish a book, how expensive it was. If only God would have shown me what I was going to go through ahead of time. I thought I was just going to write and everything would work out, but it was very difficult and expensive. You cannot imagine what authors have to go through. Think about yourself and what is the right thing for you to do. Help the creative people grow and develop. Here's an interesting thought. Many people often write and say, "Oh, you are just out to get money. You were given this gift and should be giving the books as gifts." But in reality, books are made up of paper that someone had to cut the tree to make the paper, someone had to pay for the ink, or to print the words. Do you know how much this all costs? What about paying the publisher, the editor, the illustrator? You see, people speak without realizing or understanding how much work goes into publishing a book. But they themselves go to work and receive money for it. It's written, "Let him who taught the word share in all good things with him who teaches." People only remember that. What was given as a gift, you must give freely. What about where it is written, "To bring the tithes and provide for the Levites who served"? It's normal. It's normal to receive something for your work. Or all the creative people would have to go lay tile as a job. Like the one author mentioned whose CDs were laying in the garage, he had to go and lay tile saying, "I'm unable to write songs."
Just because there wasn't any support?
Because you still need to make money and feed your children. The CDs are just laying there. The $5,000 invested were not returned. How is he to write now? Not too long ago, I was reading the scriptures and remembered this man who had started to lay the tile. When Nehemiah returned to rebuild the temple, he found that in the rooms where sacrifices were being brought for the Levites lived a man named Tobiah, an Ammonite. The Lord had forbidden Ammonites to be among the Israelites. The priests had allowed Tobiah to be in the temple, more specifically the room where sacrifices were being brought for the Levites. And Nehemiah writes, "Lord, remember the good deed that I have done, and kicked out Tobiah and his belongings, and had the Levites returned from their fields." The Levite servants of God who sang, composed, lived in the Lord's temple. They had to go work in the fields, in other words, lay tile, because Tobiah lived in the very heart, you can say, of the Lord's nation, although God had forbidden it. As I read this, it was a big revelation to me that to many of us, the spiritual Tobiah lives in our brain, stealing the room for creative work and people. Yes, we don't have temples in the Levites in this day, but it was written as an example to understand how God feels towards us. If we look at the big picture, Tobiah is the one taken away from the creative Levites ministry. And the creative people have to go work on the fields, work in the gardens, lay tile, try to earn enough money for some bread for their families. And then God's people are left with no songs, no poetry, no lyrics, all because we were taught wrongly. And this symbolical Tobiah is sitting on the throne of our mentality. This was a strong revelation for me, and I understood I have to tell others about this. If not I, then who? All the authors are scared and shy to talk about these topics, worrying about what others will say. But at the same time, they struggle from all of this because no one knows about them. Their ministry isn't growing. Books aren't being published. We have started to translate English songs into Russian, even though it's written, "Sing unto Lord a new song." How many Russian authors are out there whose work is being used without acknowledging their names, who are having their work downloaded for free with no financial support? People do not understand that these authors aren't making anything when you download illegally. It'd be better if you would tell people where you found these poems, where similar material can be found. I put a lot of my poems out for free. Almost 90% of my work is out on the internet as a gift. It's not like I sell all my poems. I just sell my published poetry books. However, many of my poems are out there as a gift. Even then, people continue to post my poems without crediting the author, or they copy the work. If you bring a person a cup of water, meaning a poem, show them where the well is. The person will come and drink more, will get more water. So this is something we must change so that creative people could serve God more, grow in their ministry. Readers or listeners, we need your support. Because if I did not have this support, I don't know if I could have ever understood that this is my calling, or if people did not send these letters or tell me what these poems are doing in their lives. I believe that God sends these people at the right time. There were times when I got discouraged and I wanted to quit thinking, who am I? Or when something in life happens and I got upset thinking, what kind of a minister are you? You're just a regular person. And I'd cry and humble myself and want to quit all ministry. These moments would come and the devil just pressured me spiritually. And at the time comes a letter from a person. You know, Natalia, I read your poems and I was able to rise up from my depression. For 3 years I couldn't go to church and now I returned. I returned to church and this poem really changed me and did a work in me. And I would read this and understand that all the thoughts that I had, who are you, just quit it all, these thoughts were not from the Lord. And once again I would understand that this is my ministry and this is what I must do. I could see the fruits and rejoice saying, Lord, thank you for sending this person at the right time.
For encouragement.
Yes, it's very important for us to encourage one another.
На мольберте жизни красками небес напишу.
Последнее время
Lately, Natalia has been invited more frequently to visit different cities both in Europe and the United States for talent nights. She does not divide people in dominations, but serves in different types of churches. God gives her platforms and stages from which creativity and art is captivating more people. A question that is asked of her often is, what must be done in order to get on the radio or on the television? To who do I turn in order to be published in magazines? She sincerely, honestly answers, do not think about such things, for if you faithfully do what you are supposed to do, you will be found. This happened in her life, and so she is certain that only God could open such doors.
За сыночка кровинку мою все отдам, все пройду, все стерплю. Спи, малыш мой, мамина любовь на посту твоего дыхания молится, поет, сквозь огонь на руках несет.
я смотрю на
I
вас,
look at you and I see this joy. When a person understands that whatever hardships that they have to go through, whatever worries, pain, or sorrow, sleepless nights, you still understand that you are doing what God wants you to do. There is a joy in that. How do you find your calling and hold on to it?
Truly, there is joy when you understand for what you are living, what you are doing with your life. I struggled and could not understand for a long time what I was supposed to do. Was I supposed to put on shows, write books, record podcasts? Where was I supposed to direct all of my experiences and desires? I so badly wanted to do something for the Lord. I did not even consider poems as my ministry. I just thought this is a hobby of mine that someone might read and rejoice about. I truly struggled for a long time, and I believe this word is for many people today who have not discovered what their calling is. Make it your goal to find your calling. Most importantly, you must find God in your life.
How do you find your calling?
First, you must pray. I kept asking God to help me find my calling and fulfill my purpose in life. Where was I supposed to be so that I would be doing what God wanted, not what I wanted? God used me. Such a sincere prayer must come from the heart. God will definitely answer it. Secondly, what you must do is to just take a look on what your capabilities are. Your calling will always be related to your capabilities. God is not going to call you to be a chef if you do not enjoy cooking and are not any good at it. For this is also a calling, and is no less than a poet or less than someone standing on stage to feed someone in church, to organize it all.
With healthy, yummy food.
Yes, to know recipes and to love cooking. Grow in this ministry. Or maybe you're a prayer warrior, or maybe you're a giver. There are so many gifts that a person can grow in. So my advice is to look at your capabilities. Think about what you love doing most. What are you good at that others may not be so good at? Look for areas where there is a need. Maybe there is no one to turn on the sound system at church. Maybe that is your ministry. Without that ministry, the microphones would not work.
Songs would not be heard.
Or maybe your ministry is to sweep the floor. You might think, that is so humiliating. But in front of the Lord, this ministry is just as valuable. Or maybe you will sit in the back row and pray for the person on stage so that person does not fall into pride. Lord, that person speaks so well, continue to use him, but do not let him become prideful, because for people on stage it's so easy to do so. Maybe you will be praying and then you will receive the fruits of this preacher. Maybe your gift would be serving with hospitality. This is also a gift. Not everyone can take people in and constantly drive them around. I was in Germany recently in 23 cities and I saw a person who simply had this gift.
A gift of hospitality?
Yes. In that house, you feel like you are home. He knew how to organize where I would go and how I would get there. I looked at him and I said, "Thank you." And he replied, "Don't thank me. I am doing this for God, not for you. I understood that this is my ministry. If I cannot preach, that does not mean I cannot have a ministry. I could drive around the person who preaches, and I will also be rewarded. We are not copies, we're all originals, and we each have our own ministry, our own calling. Most importantly, we have to find it."
You said that if you are doing something that is not your ministry, you are already creating two problems.
Yes, you are leaving your spot empty, and you are also taking up someone else's spot. You are not allowing that other person to step in to their ministry. It's like a jacket. It may look good on one person, and you think, I will buy myself the same one. And you buy the jacket, but it looks completely different on you because it's not your type. And your calling will always come with the feeling that you are ready to do this day and night and without pay. Of course, understandably, it's always good to have support or some sort of financial help. It will give you more time for your ministry.
And it'll give you more opportunity.
Yes, but even if no one buys your books or CDs, you will still continue to do this. Of course, the support of people close to you is very important.
Natalia, you have written wonderful children's books. You have 5 volumes already, correct? Can you read a portion of the children's book for us today?
Yes, I will read a small portion, and I would like to say right away that these books came out exactly how I imagined, how God had placed it on my heart. I so badly wanted them to not only be educational, but also colorful and have good quality. There are very few children's books like this.
Especially Christian ones.
Yeah, when I was looking for something to read to my child, I understood that some were not well illustrated, although the meaning of the book was good, or the meaning was not so good. I really wanted to make a good quality product so that children could read.
Как вы думаете, все ли в порядке на этой картинке? Что-то не так. Чай разлился, да? Сейчас я вам прочитаю, что произошло с этой девочкой.
While drinking her tea, Katya accidentally dropped her cup. Knowing her mother's reaction, she quickly ran to her room, away from the place of mishap. She thought, I'm just playing. I will have an excuse. She heard her mother in the kitchen, asking the cat if he was responsible for the spilled tea.
Ты, похоже, дело сделал тайно.
While her mother blamed the cat, Katya did not say a word. Katya knew who was truly guilty, but would not admit to it.
Бабушка очки
Grandma grabbed her glasses and said, "What is wrong with the portrait, granddaughter? Did the scribbles on the portrait come from your little hands?" Katya shrugged her shoulders, saying, "Oh, it must have been the cat again." Well, I will not read any further. I think it would be interesting to know what happened to the cat and then to Katya, how she finally confessed and understood what happened. These are the illustrations in the book. We are now distributing this book in Ukraine, Kiev, Russia, and St. Petersburg. We want to publish it elsewhere, but it depends on how the book is sold. We invested the money into it, and depending on how it is sold, we will publish the next and the next.
So that the books would continue and be published, even in the English language. Continue to support Natalia Shevchenko. This is important.
Yes, we have translated into German language and are currently working on translating into the English language. There's so much work to be done to bring this into different languages and countries.
With time, Natalia began to have melodies in addition to her poems. Because of this, songs were created. Some of her first songs were The Touch, That Day, and A Mother's Love. And later, other musicians wanted to write music based on Natalia's composition of words. That is how some of the most popular songs sung today in many churches in countries across the world, such as Heaven Cries Out and Laughing Now, came about. The following are excerpts of songs with lyrics written by Natalia Shevchenko.
Над Богом в больнице никто не смеется, над Ним на войне. Там вера в сердцах начинает искриться, и чаще молитвы звучат в тишине. Слетает с лица вдруг надменная маска, когда самолет начинает трясти, никто не заявит.
Именем Божьим мир давно уже свыкся, с ним идут убивать, воровать и молиться. Кто-то смеет гадать,
кто-то и мысляет, слово Твое этот мир забывает. Твое слово сложили.
Думают, небо молчит и не судит, а небо кричит, кричит, загляни в мои очи. Оно не молчит, не молчит, оно кровоточит, а небо кричит, кричит, только слышат ли уши?
Отрасли сердца стучит, проникая в души, а небо лишь.
Я знаю, ты мой Бог, Отец благой, знаю это шагание. Ты обратит меня в характер твой, это путь твое сияние. Смотри, как он притих среди ягнят, а через 33 весны распят.
И мы снимаем клипы
We record
музыкальные
clips
на
of
разные
various
песни.
songs. There is one clip that we have been recording for 4 years.
Where can we view these clips?
I have a YouTube channel called Creations by Natalia Shevchenko. You can look at songs there, and more importantly, our production that we are doing right now, video poems. We record to bring into perspective these poems because people do not read often, and we believe it is needed right now. I think that in today's age, people would rather watch videos. For this reason, we started to produce videos of the poems to reach more people.
Thank you for sacrificing your time. I believe that even more people have found their way towards their calling and to fulfill what God desires from each of us. What is the purpose of life? So many people ask this question. The answer to this question is different for every person. A person feels an inner pull towards something specific, towards that which is their calling. How important it is not to throw away our lives for nothing, but to truly do what God wants from us. This will give us true joy.